Someone asked me an interesting question today. So I've made a couple of videos about wives submitting to husbands and just kind of breaking down this whole dynamic about submission and about, husbands loving wives and just basically the whole dynamic of marriage. And through the course of conversation, he described kind of his view of what a more egalitarian style marriage would look like versus a traditional or complementarian view, which would be a hierarchy. Husband is the head of the wife, wife submits to the husband. And so going through and kind of describing his view, and then I described my view of what like a perfect marriage looks like at a functional level. Essentially, the two things look almost identical in terms of function and interaction. And so his question is, well, what's the difference then? If functionally, the way that you view the interactions in a perfect state marriage are exactly the same as an egalitarian view, then why the hierarchy? Why is that part important? Why not just do away with that and just jump right to the agreement and kind of like egalitarian, we're submitted to each other. Why not just go right to that if functionally that's how you think it should work anyway? And the answer is because human beings don't start out perfected, not in their relationship with God and not in their marriages. And just like entering into a relationship with God, there's a whole lot of dying to yourself in order to make the relationship work. But just like your relationship with God, you don't do it perfectly. Now, just imagine what would happen if God was as imperfect as we are, but the expectations were that we stay together forever. Like, I want you to think about this for a minute. You get into a relationship with God and just think about like how much of a mess you are when you get into a relationship with God. And he begins exposing through life and pressure and all of these things that the issues in your life that you need to work on. Now, I want you to imagine that he was as imperfect as you are on the other side of that relationship. Instead of being perfectly loving, perfectly kind, perfectly gentle, but also perfectly authoritative and perfectly able to see exactly where the issues are in your heart to be able to surface these things out, and was perfectly patient with you while you were working them out. Right? All of the multiple failures that are going to inevitably happen as those things get exposed, all of the inevitable outbursts and tantrums and everything else that we go through in this relationship with God as we are being perfected in that relationship. But imagine if God was another human who was just as flawed as you are, and now you're both in this environment, in this relationship, trying to somehow work together and get to an end result when both of you are equally jacked up and equally being exposed by the circumstances. Because this is the reality of a marriage. You have two flawed human beings, who are innately self-oriented because they've never had to worry about having another human being literally living in their space that they now have to accommodate for. Then add children into that. So now you're not sleeping. Now you're dealing with somebody who doesn't even have the capacity to recognize their own selfishness. And so you're now dealing with them and their emotions and their feelings and all of the complexity that comes with that. And then you add on the financial pressure and the stress that comes with trying to figure out how you're going to navigate making sure everyone is provided for, and the logistics of time and just everything that goes into trying to serve your wife and serve your children and make sure the kids get to school on time, but the wife has enough attention and the husband has enough attention. Everybody feels good about themselves, right? Like all of this complexity gets piled on to this relationship that is between two flawed human beings. If it's imperfect and messy when it's between us, one flawed human being, and God, can you imagine what the mess looks like when you take two flawed human beings and stick them in the same situation and apply all of the pressures that marriage brings? Now, my point in bringing all that up is that when you understand this, you realize that the perfect version of each person deferring to each other, each person perfectly respecting each other, each person being able to perfectly navigate when is it best to defer my will to yours versus when is it best for you to defer your will to mine for the sake of the relationship, for the sake of the direction that we're headed, for the sake of the kids, for the sake of the higher priorities. The reality is that all of those things are going to be deeply imperfect when the relationship begins. And just like our relationship with the Lord, it takes time for us to mature so that as time progresses, just like our relationship with the Lord, the hierarchy becomes non-functional. And what I mean by that is when we enter relationship with God, it's a hierarchy. It starts with submission. God says, I love you, obey my commandments. And so he gives you the ways in which you need to reorder your life. And it's submission because you don't understand yet. You don't understand why he wants you to do things the way that he tells you to do them because you're human. Your mind has not yet been renewed to the point where you can comprehend and process what it is that he's trying to do. And because you just met him, it's not like you know him really well. And so you just kind of have to trust and obey. And so our relationship with the Lord is very hierarchical in function when we first start. And so as time progresses, what happens is we get to know him. We get to know his ways. We become transformed through the renewing of our mind. And as that happens, the relationships begins to evolve from being a hierarchical relationship where God said it, so I'm going to go do it, to being more of a relational or agreement-based relationship where you feel like God's saying, hey, I want you to go do this. And because you know him and you have maturity from time walking with him and you've seen how his ways work, you can see the thing that he's calling you to and you're going, you know what? Okay, I think I see what you're trying to do here. I agree with that. I think that's good. And so now you're moving in agreement with the Lord. You're not moving in submission. You're not moving in hierarchy because the relationship has matured to a place where it's no longer necessary to functionally operate in the hierarchy, even though he's still God and I'm still his child. And so hierarchically, it's still a hierarchy, right? He's still God and I'm still the child in terms of like structure, right? But functionally, relationally, we don't have to operate within the hierarchy because he doesn't have to assert his authority and I don't have to submit to that authority because I agree with what it is that he wants to do because I know him. Or if we run into a situation where, say, maybe I don't understand and I'm not quite ready to move on that yet, because we have the relational equity, I can have that conversation with him. We can dialogue about it. And maybe he's patient with me, bringing me to that place of understanding and agreement with him before we move because he's God and he's able to make that kind of room. Now, it's not always that way. It doesn't mean that there's never going to be a time where the Lord has to assert his authority because he's trying to take me to a place that we haven't been yet relationally. And so we have to go through another round of submission and hierarchy leading up to understanding. But generally speaking, as the relationship matures, you should see the relationship becoming less and less hierarchical and more and more relational and more agreement and moving in agreement together. And it's no different in a marriage. The husband and wife, when they first get married, are two flawed individuals trying to work through the messiness of relationship. And so God gives us an order to protect both people. And the order looks like this. The husband has a requirement to protect and care for the wife. It's described. This is what love is described as. Caring for the wife as one's own body, making sure she's fed, clothed, has a roof over her head, and is provided for with the things that she needs in order to live. Another way you could put it is like this. How do you treat your own body? You feed yourself first. And so if you have food that comes into the house, because the Lord is the provider, right? Like as a man, I can't take responsibility for providing because I can't produce anything of my own volition. I'm not a creator. But what I am responsible for is the distribution of the things that God has given me. So whatever circumstances, whatever work he's brought my way, I have to be willing to do the things, apply myself to the things that God has put in my realm, my sphere of capability. And then whatever comes in, whatever he provides, she eats first, right? That's what love is. She eats first. It's not I buy you a Gucci bag whenever you want. It's not I perfectly attend to your feelings. That's not love. Love, biblical love described in the Bible is that I treat her body in the same way I treat my own. I make sure that it's cared for. I make sure that she has a roof over her head, and I don't cut her off from the provisional things that she is due as my wife just because I don't like her attitude. right? I don't kick her out of the house and make her sleep in the barn because I don't like how she talked to me. I don't withhold dinner because I don't like the way she acted, right? Like I provide for her in the same way that I would provide for myself. She eats first. And likewise, the wife is to submit to and respect her husband. And that word submit is a military term. It means that if I say we as a family unit are going this direction, she defers her will to that direction and she comes with me. That's how that works. And she is respectful in the way that she communicates and interacts with me. Now, why is the respect part important? People come up with all kinds of crazy ideas about what the respect part is about. Like it's about ego or it's about, making the man feel good or what. It has nothing to do with that. The respect from the wife is for the children. That's what it's for. Because the wife is the first person in the house that is setting the tone for the hierarchy in the organization. So that when the children are born, the children have an example of how they are to engage with their father. The wife is the first person who sets that tone. This structure is the foundation of the marriage. It's the bedrock. It's the thing that's there even if nothing else is working. I hate your guts. You think I'm a moron, right? Like if that's where we are personally, relationally, the foundation of the marriage is still, no matter how much you think I'm a moron, you still respect me and you still submit to my leadership whenever I say we need to go here or we need to go there. You defer to me and we go here and we go there. And likewise, no matter how awful you're being, no matter how lazy you're being, no matter whatever, right? Whatever the issue is that I have with you as a wife, right? Whatever it is that you're doing, I do not cut you off from the provisional things that you need. And it goes beyond that. It's to the very best of my ability. I provide for you in a way that elevates you to the highest level that my provision will allow for. That's what that means. So no matter how crap you're being to me, every single dollar, every single thing that comes into my possession goes straight to you for your benefit. And what this does is create a safe operating environment for the relationship to be able to mature to the place where both people are able to move in agreement instead of in hierarchy. And it also protects the environment that the children are supposed to be being brought up in. It protects that environment until the children are old enough to be able to stand on their own.